The GoatMan. David hated hospitals. He despised them, in fact. David hated the ever-present smell of cleaning products and the atmosphere of disease that clung around them. He usually did his best to avoid going to any hospital, but today was different. His grandfather had fallen very ill and had been in the hospital for over a week now. David did his best to stall his visit, but the day before his mother had told him that Grandpa Sam had requested David soon after the doctor said he was approaching his end. David was very fond of his grandfather. When he was younger, Grandpa Sam used to take him on fishing trips where they would sit and talk for hours. Grandpa Sam filled David's head with stories from his younger days. David took a deep breath before leaving his car. He walked through the doors and headed for the reception, squeezing his face at the smell that greeted him. The overwhelming aroma of hand sanitizer and bleach engulfed him. His stomach lurched. He introduced himself to the attendant, and she escorted him to Grandpa Sam's room. His grandfather was a tall and robust man even for his age, but seeing him in the bed, David thought he looked small and shriveled. His face lit up when he saw David. "David," he said with a smile, "I wasn't sure you would come." David laughed. "You know how much I hate hospitals, Grandpa, but for you, I'll put aside my disdain. How are you?" "Well, they say I'm going to die soon." David didn't quite know how to react to his grandfather's tone. His face became grave. He felt a prick of guilt for not coming earlier. "You asked to see me?" "Ah, yes, I did. I wanted to share one last story with you before I go." David drew the chair closer to the bed. It was going to be a long visit. "When I was younger," Grandpa Sam started, "I lived in a small fishing village before relocating to the city. The only doctor available lived in a distant village miles away." "Grandpa, I've heard this one before," David said. His grandfather had a knack for forgetting he had told some stories before and repeating them almost word for word. "Not this one," Grandpa Sam said. "Let me finish." He adjusted himself in his bed and continued. "I was about 20 back then. I had always had it in my head to live and die in that wretched village, but when the time came, I wasn't ready. I fell very sick. It was deep in the rainy season, and the storms that came prevented anyone from traveling. There was no way to get to the doctor. It was horrible. I thought I would die." Grandpa Sam had a distant look on his face. David had never seen his grandfather cry, but at the moment he thought he could see tears welling up in his eyes. Grandpa Sam continued. "That was when he came." David sat up. "Who?" "The GoatMan. He was tall, very tall. He stood on his hind legs. He had the torso of a man, but the head and legs of a goat. He never told me his name. I don't think I would have wanted to know." It was all getting very confusing for David. He was beginning to think his grandfather was utterly delirious. "Grandpa, what are you talking about?" Grandpa Sam coughed. His IV line shook as he tried his best to control himself. David could see how much his illness had taken from him. He just appeared in the room, like a shadow on the wall. Till today, I have no idea who he is, where he came from, or even what he is. But he told me I could live. The tears started to fall. I was young. I couldn't see so far into the future. I wasn't even sure I would have children. Calm down, Grandpa. It's okay. You don't have to tell the story. I don't like seeing you upset like this. No, I have to tell it, Grandpa Sam said. When the GoatMan came, he offered me respite from my pain. He told me I could live, but only if I agreed to pass the sickness on to my grandson. He's going to come for you, David. You can't fight fate. He's going to come for you because of a choice I made many years ago. David sat there listening to it all. He could scarcely believe all he was hearing. It sounded incredibly absurd to him. All the talk about a GoatMan and passing a sickness down generations. He had no patience for it. He did his best to get his grandfather to calm down. He had started crying effusively while repeating, I'm sorry. The nurse heard the commotion and rushed in. She chased David away for disturbing her patient. When David got to his car, his head was swimming. He had never seen Grandpa Sam like that. His grandfather was a cheerful soul who always cracked jokes and never failed to have a smile on his face. Seeing him like that was chilling. David concluded that he will visit the hospital again the next day to get some clarity. He turned on the engine and drove off. On the way home, he considered the story about the GoatMan. He remembered his mother saying something about Grandpa Sam only getting sick once in his life, a potentially life-threatening illness from which he miraculously recovered. David had never heard why, and even as absurd as the story sounded, a part of him was convinced that it was true. He began to grow anxious. His thoughts were spiraling out of control. His hands tightened on the steering wheel. It was then that he saw a flash of light in front of him. A car was in his lane, speeding right towards him. He twisted the wheel out of the way, sending him crashing past the trees at the side of the road. He wasn't sure how long the car went before it finally slammed against a tree trunk. David stumbled out of the car, dazed. He cursed the reckless driver in his mind. He saw a dark figure coming towards him, obscured by the low light. He thought it was the driver of the car that crashed into him. "Hey!" he shouted, quickening his steps toward the figure. When the man's silhouette materialized, David stopped dead in his tracks. His bones grew cold and his legs refused to move. The face he saw was a monstrous hybrid of a goat and a man, with horizontal slits for pupils and long, droopy ears hanging at the sides. It was the embodiment of horror. He knew immediately what he was looking at. The GoatMan. "David's Bruce," it said. Its voice was deep and it reverberated in David's chest. What? What do you want from me?" The GoatMan grabbed David by the throat. He lifted him off the floor. David flailed his legs and kicked him, but he wouldn't budge. The GoatMan parted his lips to speak again. "Payment." David's first instinct was to run, but something told him there was no way of running from the GoatMan. He had another idea. "I want to make my own deal," he choked. "That is allowed, isn't it?" The GoatMan considered it for a while. "The price must be paid." "The price will be paid," David said. Then he proceeded to propose his deal to the entity in front of him. David had no idea where his courage came from or how he came up with the idea. The entire day was beginning to seem like a very long nightmare from which he would not wake up. The next day, he visited his grandfather again. Grandpa Sam was looking much better. He was eating his lunch when David arrived. His face was peaceful. He looked up at David. All of a sudden, the memories of all the times they had spent together came flooding in, but they were all tainted now. "David," he said. David leaned into Grandpa Sam and whispered, "The GoatMan came for me, and I made a deal of my own. You can't fight fate." Grandpa Sam's eyes widened in the realization of what had transpired. His features began to twist as he let out a cry of agony. Boils started to grow all over him, as big as golf balls and black as death. His screams grew louder and louder as the excruciating pain spread into his body. David could not bear to watch. He was about to turn away when he felt the cold presence in the room. The GoatMan. He did not have to turn around to confirm that the creature was standing behind him. "1 year, and I'll be back. No more deals," he said. "You will serve in eternity the day your grandfather dies." David remembered the terms of the deal. He nodded grimly. He knew what came next. The nurse burst into the scene. When she saw Grandpa Sam, she panicked and called the other nurses. They rushed him to the quarantine room. By then, he had already started convulsing. David followed them there, looking through the glass and watching his grandfather writhe in the bed. That was his life for the next year, David realized. He closed his eyes and listened to the intense screams of his grandfather. He knew he was going to end up paying for the old man's wickedness, but not before seeing him writhe in pain day after day, wishing for death, but having it elude him. "There's no changing that I have to pay for his sins eventually," David said to himself. I know I'm going to suffer. I know I'll end up paying for the old man's weakness. His final atonement shall be the pretense for my eternity of servitude. In the end, it was all worth it. You can order up the most lavish feast of your life, but sooner or later, someone has to pay the bill. I may have to pay for the old man's sins, there's no changing that. But for now, at least, I get to watch the show.